Hello, guys! I know it has been a few days, and I truly do apologize um, for the long wait. I've been meaning to record this, but I've just had a couple things come up that I had to take care of. Anyways, I don't have anything else, so let's just get right into it. Mastermind Rise of Anarchy, written by Clouds. My head in the clouds, not coming down. Read by Reen MHA. Chapter 39. Going nicely. Summary. Working towards goals. Ochako took a deep breath and squeezed Sue's hand for reassurance before walking into the commons room. She knew why she needed to actually have a conversation with her classmates, but it was still intimidating to walk up to them and ask for help. There was still a voice in her head that sounded like her own, but was probably Nezu's, that was screaming at her to stop and just keep going on her own. She was strong. She'd figure out a way to make it work. She shouldn't be pushing her problems onto anyone else. She forced herself to keep walking. She could do this. Nezu was pleased. Everything seemed to be coming together nicely, and it looked as though everything would be back to normal, and soon all this chaos would be nothing but an unpleasant memory. Izuku Midoriya had made quite a large difference, but humans were nothing if not resilient. Their societies were most comfortable and most effective if they resisted change. Obviously, changes would be made, but this was a time of upheaval, and like many similar times in history, this would simply be a blimp that the children wrote essays about in class as society steadily progressed as it always had. And it just And it wasn't just the human society that were resilient like this. However, the individual humans were even more so. It was delightful how far they could go when one simply gave them the push. Most humans, Nezu had discovered, were living far beneath their potential. They always believed that they were at their limits, but when a push came to shove, they hardly ever failed to go beyond plus ultra. Just look at Ame. He had been, for all intents and purposes, a completely unremarkable human. He hadn't even had a quirk to his name when Nana Shimura found him, and yet look at all he accomplished. He not only had become the #1 hero, but a symbol of peace. He had gone beyond those silly human limitations that so many people ascribed it to become what the world needed. All Might was proof that individual humans weren't limited to the ways they thought they were. And now Ochako was following the same path and lifting other humans along with her. He'd been watching and guiding her rise carefully, of course, as was his duty as an educator. He'd seen the hope she'd brought to everyone, and was so pleased with all the ways she had stepped up when none of the other heroes had, becoming the new symbol that was needed to keep society stable during that time of upheaval, and now it seemed she was encouraging her classmates to do the same. Dividing patrols between them was a decent idea, even if it risked making Uraraka herself less visible. It would be worth it, though, assuming that the perceived equalizing of both risk and effort would encourage her remaining classmates to take the first step towards pushing beyond their limitations as well. It would most likely take a bit of time and effort, of course, and Nezu would have to be careful to encourage all of them, but this would establish her as a leader in her class, which would only help build credibility with the masses. Yes, an army of heroic students with Uraraka as a powerful symbol at its head would be more than enough to stand against Mastermind's influence and bring them back to a more stable society. Things were going quite nicely indeed. 3 days into his internship, and Hitoshi had no idea why the Pussycats had requested him. He had been trying to do as Aizawa taught him, stay quiet, observe everything, snoop around when he could, everything short of brainwashing them to gather information. Aizawa had said that he hadn't recognized the signs, considering turning to villainy, but at this point he wasn't sure. It seemed like everyone had the potential to turn against the heroes if they were just given the right push, so it was hard to tell. So far, he noticed a few changes to the Pussycats since the training camp. First of all, they weren't working in a perfect tandem like they had back then. Hitoshi couldn't quite put a finger on it because they didn't fight, at least not in front of him. But there had been some sort of unspoken tension since he arrived. Ragdoll seemed the most angry out of all of them, so the most like Bakugo, if Hitoshi were comparing them to his classmates. But Mandalay was probably a close second. If Tiger were to go villain, it would probably be because of the same reason as Tokoyami. Initially, it had looked like he and Pixie Bob were the least likely to turn villainy, but the family they created was so important to them that if the other two were to turn, then they probably would go along for the ride. Basically, there was potential, but nothing solid yet that he could report back to Aizawa. He was currently out in the woods practicing his capture weapon. The Pussycats didn't want him staying too far, so he could see the main house, which was enough to give him some room to move. He had just been using trees as targets, which worked pretty well, and let him use the environment to practice using his own body weight and momentum. When he anchored onto a tree, it was fine training session, but nothing special until he heard rustling behind him. He turned just in time to see a small dirt monster coming his way, and slammed into it with both feet, knocking it down into dust. Hitoshi landed in a crouch, ready for another attack, but instead, Pixie Bob just calmly walked from behind the trees. Hitoshi gave her a suspicious look. Was that a test or something? No, just figured it'd be more effective training you if you didn't know it was coming, Pixie Bob said with a smile. How's it going? Hitoshi shrugged. I usually work in an urban setting, but a new environment is alright, I guess. Pixie Bob nodded in understanding and created a new dirt monster. It was small, around the shape and size of a puppy dog, and instead of sending it to attack him, she just sat down on the grass and started playing with it as it ran around. I guess you're wondering why we requested you. It's been on my mind, Hitoshi said, slowly sitting down next to her. Are you actually going to give me an answer? As best I can. Pixie Bob frowned. I hope you understand that some things are sensitive, so details might be lacking in some areas. We're heroes. Hitoshi nodded. Some sensory is to be expected. Pixie Bob took a deep breath. How much do you know about what Ari went through before Mastermind rescued her? And that, my friends, is the end of the chapter. I don't know. I feel like that chapter was a little off. Oopsie poopsie. But anyways, I don't really have anything else other than, after this chapter, there's 10 more till the end, if I counted correctly. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I will try to get a community post out for if there's like another thing you want Podfic or something. Because I'd be more than happy to do something to Podfic fanfic that hasn't already been podfixed or podficked or whatever. Blah blah blah. My words. But yeah. Anyways, guys, I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you all in the next episode. Peace.